Both the US and Iran say they've agreed to a 2-week ceasefire, as I've been saying. Just to reiterate that US President Donald Trump said he is suspending his latest deadline for Iran to strike a deal or face US military escalation. The president wrote on Truth Social that after a conversation with the Pakistani Prime Minister who proposed the deal subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. Iranian state media claims the US has agreed to their 10-point peace plan that includes complete and permanent end to the war, compensation and reconstruction payments to Iran, full commitment to lifting of sanctions on Iran. Iran fully commits to not seeking possession of any nuclear weapons was something that the US had demanded of Iran. This, as we've been saying, is a rapidly developing story and we are still picking up more reactions. Getting you the latest now from Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who's just put out a post on X, and this is what it says. With great humility, I'm pleased to announce that the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States of America, along with their allies, have agreed to an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere, effective immediately. I warmly welcome the sagacious gesture and extend deepest gratitude to the leadership of both countries and invite their delegations to Islamabad on Friday, 10th April 2026 to further negotiate for a conclusive agreement to settle all disputes. Both parties have displayed remarkable wisdom and understanding and have remained constructively engaged in furthering the cause of peace and stability. We earnestly hope that the Islamabad talks succeed in achieving sustainable peace and wish to share more good news in the coming days. That is from the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Remember, Pakistan has positioned itself as a crucial mediator in these conversations. For more, let's go across to Hashar Janedi, our Washington correspondent for BBC Persian. Hashar, good to have you once again. Before we get into what we are likely to see, what more are you picking up from Iran, from Tehran, as far as their official reaction? The enemy is facing a historic failure and then refers that Iran had put out a 10-point peace plan that the US has accepted. Of course, they're going to negotiate about this. This is what the Iranians are arguing, that Iran will have control over the traffic in the Hormuz Strait. There will be a ceasefire, total ceasefire regarding all of the fighting between Israel and Iran's proxies. The US should leave all bases in the region and compensation should be paid to Iran. And of course, the Iranian media are also adding that part of that 10-point deal is lifting of all sanctions and ending of all hostilities. The Supreme National Security Council says that amid a lack of trust on the American side and the Iranian side, mutual trust talks will start resuming in Islamabad, Pakistan from Friday. And it's going to be for 2 weeks, and they've said that if the talks are successful, the 2-week ceasefire could be extended. But one other point, this is amid this statement and this posing that we are the victor. There is another point that is very important for the Iranian government. This war started with the killing of Ali K, the leader of the Islamic Republic, and senior generals within the IRGC. This was an existential threat, existential war for the regime. Therefore, they would consider themselves victorious because they survived this 30-plus days of war with the United States and Israel. Kashar, I want to go back to some of those points that you mentioned, the 10-point plan. How difficult or complex are these conversations going to be in Pakistan for both sides to find common ground to agree, given that they are also operating in an environment of a serious trust deficit? Well, that's true. That's true. There's a deficit of trust. Iran and the US have negotiated twice in the past year, and both times in the middle of negotiations, a war has started. The demands of Iran, no matter how victorious they're portraying themselves in state media, Iran is in a very weak position. Its army has been heavily battered. Its economy is in shambles. The regime has an unfinished business with the opposition and the people. Look, the government has started executing some of those people who were arrested during the protests in January in the past few days. And we've had 1 or 2 executions every day. So the regime at the same time has to harden its grip on power inside the country as well. It's in a bad situation, but at the same time, its demands are difficult for the Americans to address. The US says it's accepted to ceasefire and that under the condition that there will be free flow of traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is mentioning that it wants to have control over maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz because of its geographic location. That's number one. There's going to be difficult negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. The Iranian state media are saying that the US has agreed to enrichment in Iran. So there are going to be very difficult negotiations. It's going to be a very hard 2 weeks. Akashar, very briefly before I let you go, I know it's still early, but have you managed to have any conversations with people in Iran? Any reactions you're picking up from the people there after this announcement? Yes, it's been a long night for Iranians. Many people were anticipating heavy American bombardment of the power plants, the roads, the bridges, as the president had announced. So the announcement came around 1 Zuli in the morning in Tehran, and many people were awake. There is a sense of relief. In the past few days, people were busy buying groceries and food and storing water, buying candles, because they were afraid that there will be no electricity. They have now some sort of relief that the power plants are not going to be attacked. At the same time, many of the people who were against the regime, who opposed the regime, believe that this war, amid all of its horror and its damages, will result in a regime change. That hasn't happened. They're going to be dealing with a regime who has been injured in this war, who the economy is broken. The regime is more angry and they have to face this regime again. Kasha Jain, thank you very much for your time and speaking to us. Meanwhile, more news coming in. Israel says it's tracking a barrage of incoming missiles from Iran. These are the skies over Tel Aviv, and we are getting reports of 3 rounds of Iranian strikes towards Israel, with loud booms reported by our teams in Jerusalem. Axios is reporting US officials believe it could take a while for Iranian armed forces to receive the message to stop those strikes. So at least that is what we're picking up at the moment, but we'll keep a close watch on developments on that front soon after the announcement of that ceasefire. Well, joining me live is Colonel Mark Canyon, Senior Advisor with the Defense and Security Department at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you very much for your time here on BBC News. Well, we have been talking at length about the diplomatic progress so far. Do you feel, given everything that we've seen and what we are likely to see, this is or could lead to some sort of resolution? We've heard a lot of speculation from the various commentators that it's very uncertain at this point. We may end up in just a frozen conflict, that is, that we have ceasefires that are just repeated and we end up in the same situation that we are now. It's important, I think, to step back and look at the military situation and recognize that militarily, Iran has taken a terrible beating. It has not come out of the war stronger. But the United States has also been frustrated with its inability to keep the strait open. What do you think changed in the last few hours behind the scenes as both sides contemplate a de-escalation? I think on the US side, President Trump has always been looking for a way to negotiate out of the conflict. He recognizes, I think, that the Iranians have been quite determined to not give in to pressure from military attacks. It may be that the Iranians have decided that there's an opportunity here to end the attacks that still maybe control the strait. Of course, it's very hard to say because we don't know what they have agreed to, if anything. And I think you're right, because it is still likely to be on shaky ground, because we've seen the kind of statements in the past from both sides as they have disagreed on critical issues. How difficult is it going to be for both sides to find common ground as they go ahead, as the Prime Minister of Pakistan suggests, meeting in Islamabad? I think it's essentially impossible. Now, it's possible that the President Trump just decides that what we have now is good enough. He's inflicted tremendous damage on, for example, the Iranian nuclear program. We did a lot back last year when we attacked the nuclear facilities. We attacked more of them. That doesn't prevent them from building a nuclear capability, but it does set them back. We've essentially destroyed their navy and their air force. Their ballistic missile capability has been basically destroyed. Their ability to produce more. Most of their inventory has been either destroyed or buried. So militarily, they're in a very weak position. However, they've been able to control the strait. That's been a tremendous military success for them and a tremendous military failure for the United States. That's why so much of this discussion has focused on the strait. Some might put up a counter-argument that Iran has really been able to draw out this war and displayed firepower that perhaps the US had not anticipated. Given the developments we've seen downing of American aircraft, how would you respond to that? I don't think that's true. But you see everything that happens in Israel and the Gulf states. So the impression that people get, I think, is very skewed. Iran has taken a tremendous beating from the bombings. Given how high the rhetoric has been, what do you think the talks are likely to look like in the days and weeks ahead? It's very unclear. It could be that the two sides just argue with each other and that the ceasefire just goes on and on and on after the 2 weeks extended another 2 weeks. The Iranians have been very skilled in extending the negotiations. They know that President Trump is very real, almost desperate to get an agreement. So they keep leading the discussion on and demanding concessions in order to continue negotiations, and that's worked pretty well so far. If this had indeed escalated, what do you think retaliation would have looked like, and what were the risks in place for the US that it was contemplating before going ahead with any decision?
Well, the United States and Israel together have immense firepower, and they can bring it to bear anywhere they want in Iran.
If they wanted to obliterate, for example, the oil industry, they could do that. You know, there are many reasons why they wouldn't want to do that. The Iranians always retaliate when they are struck, but their ability to do that has been much reduced. The number of missile and drone attacks have declined 90% from the high levels of the first couple of days of the war. But you would see some fairly dramatic footage on the video, and that would give, I think, people the impression that the Gulf states and the United States were suffering. They don't see what's happening in Israel.